MacVoices is supported by Eero, the wireless mesh network solution that you need. Visit Eero.com to get yours and use the coupon code MacVoices to receive free overnight shipping. And by Smile, the makers of world-class software like PDF Pen for Mac, PDF Pen Pro for Mac, PDF Pen for iPhone and iPad, PDF Pen Scan Plus for iPhone and iPad, Text Expander for Mac, and Text Expander for iPhone and iPad. Learn more about all their great products at smilesoftware.com. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, it's been a while since we've done a focused episode, and I couldn't think of anybody better to get us back on track with those than Mr. Mark Fuccio. Mark, it's great to see you.
Hi, Chuck. It's great to be here, and thanks for your listeners. And you have some really interesting topics to dive into today, so I think we're all going to have a lot of fun.
I'm looking forward to it because I feel like I don't know as much as I should about the topic we're going to cover. And it seems funny thing is though it's past mid-July, and I feel like I just saw you 3 days ago, but it was back at WWDC in June. So I don't know where the time goes, but it keeps going.
Oh, you must have been on an airplane. Relativity. People moving, time goes slower. So you must have been going quite near the speed of light for a while.
Oh, good. Okay, that's. Thank you, Einstein. So, in fact, you brought up this as a possible topic, and I thought it was a great one because I'm not sure that a lot of the listeners and viewers fully appreciate the implications of this, and that is the whole Apple Qualcomm situation that's going on right now. So I'm going to ask you to take us down the road and kind of explain what that situation is and how we got to where we are and what you think about it and where you think it'll go.
Okay, so I'm just have a couple notes here. So Apple and Qualcomm are fighting each other in the courts. So probably everyone has tuned it off thinking, oh, here we go again. Here's another case. Qualcomm filed purportedly making about patents, and I've read a bunch of Qualcomm's briefs and Apple's briefs and their amended briefs against each other's briefs. And I'm thinking that unlike the Apple versus Samsung case, this one seems to be markedly different. And that, to me, it seems that it's ultimately a contractual dispute. Plus, there's hints about, public policy and, maybe circumventing antitrust, et cetera, in multiple countries and venues around the world. That I think this is a really much more interesting and fascinating case. Almost worthy of, if not a TV show, then certainly 12 episodes on Netflix.
Are you volunteering to be producer? Is that what I hear?
Oh, I don't know. But, as we get into this, I think certainly I wouldn't mind writing some of the jokes because reading some of these briefs here, especially on Apple's side, they must have courses in law school of, how to take digs, at your opposing counsel and in opposing case in how you write your brief. And I'll share some of those as we get into this.
Mark, it seems like whenever there's a headline about this, certainly when it started, and then when there have been notable developments, that there's certainly a big faction out there on social media that is beating on Apple and says, okay, this is big guy beating up on little guy, or really big guy beating up on big guy. Is that the way you see it, or do you think there's some legitimate issues that Apple has raised here with regard to Qualcomm and how they were doing their contracts?
I think there are legitimate issues. Ultimately, we'll have to see what happens, and ultimately what the facts are as adjudicated by a court of law. But if we were to open, I think the nature of the case is Apple is alleging against Qualcomm that they're involved in a situation where they're double dipping or double charging for their patents. Way number one, they're doing it is, they're having to pay royalties to chip companies who are making components that license or use Qualcomm's IP. And then way number two is they force companies like Apple or Samsung or other handset makers to also take out separate patent licenses. And Apple is arguing this is basically unfair and illegal. There was a recent Supreme Court case where I guess they ruled in a similar thing, what's so-called patent exhaustion, which is, if you're paying somebody for a patent, that's going back to the owner of the patent. The owner can't come back and double dip, and extort or extract more money from you. So that seems to be the way Apple is categorizing its case. In contrast, Qualcomm is. They are acting like they're well lawyered up in that, reading their briefs, they're basically saying, all these charges by Apple are wrong, and they're not, they're not providing any factual information. Some of these things, in terms of some of the agreements they talk about between their companies, would be fascinating to see, but I've dug in, and I think they're all, filed with the court and are not publicly available. The only things are the pleadings via either side. So they talk specifically about royalty rates, payment rates, et cetera. So looking at Qualcomm's counter is basically they're saying we're giant, we're giants in the field, and we've created all these technologies for CDMA, telephones, and Apple. Oh, they're just a computer company and they have no IP. They're just a puny little guy who buys our chipsets, and without our chipsets, they would be nothing. They'd just be your proverbial 98-pound weakling. So to me, it's really interesting just to see this sort of emotional element come in not just one, but multiple of the Qualcomm pleadings. So obviously that provides an insight into the executive mindset at that company. The two of them are having their back and forth agreements, disagreements. Apple is, if you read their briefs, and I'll either send them or send some links to them. So later on, if listeners want to dive into this, they could. And what Apple is doing is they're providing very detailed. This is what Qualcomm is doing, and they're overcharging us. And we, Apple, we protested that you're charging too much. So they, Qualcomm, would agree to provide some payments back. And according to Apple's rendition of the story, it was nothing like market development or other or a discount. It was a return for market development or things that are completely separate and disjoint from, hey, you're charging us too much money for this chip, so we want a discount. And the plot thickens because there have been investigations against Qualcomm's practices in Taiwan, in Korea, I think in mainland China, also in the EU, the European Union. So I think maybe that's why, in reading the Qualcomm briefs, instead of responding, Apple says we're double dipping and this and that, or our royalty rates are too high, or effective royalty rates are too high because of this and that and the other thing. All they're saying is, Apple's, allegation is wrong, and everybody else pays our royalty rates. So, it's very, very, very interesting, to read, that case. Apparently, looking at it, it seems that the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, that maybe led to this litigation is that Apple was subpoenaed, I believe, by KFTC, Korean Fair Trade Commission, because, Samsung also has some consternation and belief that they're being charged exorbitant prices for use of some of Qualcomm's patents. So apparently there was a discussion there, and I think it's a lawyerly term of the hit the fan. because after that, Qualcomm, Apple and Qualcomm periodically had been trying to have negotiations about rates. But if my recollection of the facts, from Apple's pleading are correct, after the KTFC testimony, Qualcomm got very belligerent, and stopped paying the let me call them discount fees, just for clarity, for our conversation for listeners, even though that has absolutely no legal bearing. It's a term I created, but they stopped paying the discount fees last year, 2016, and ultimately, after a couple quarters went by, Apple decided, okay, well, if you're not going to pay us, we're going to have to sue you. So, Apple made the first strike in filing the lawsuit. Apparently, after that, there was, discussion back and forth, and Qualcomm agreed that maybe they would, start repaying the fees if Apple would amend its testimony. And by reading the Apple brief, you think they're saying Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. We're telling the truth. We can't go back and offer clarification because what you're asking us to do would be an outright falsehood. So the giants are locked in this big battle. I think part of the reason it's seemingly like a patent fight is, for whatever reason, the Qualcomm defense team maybe think that that's their best way to prevail or to win a case or minimize the damage to them. They're saying that they have, I forget the number, it was something like 8 patents that Apple was not using. And here we need to dig into some of the vagaries of patent law for a moment, because there's this term that's come up before, FRAND, free, reasonable, and non-discriminatory, in terms of a patent holder having, if a patents are essential to an industry standard like 3G or LTE, the patent holders basically strike a bargain. They say, we'll offer patent to everybody who comes in, and we'll offer it on reasonable rates. An analogy to a net neutrality, we won't say, oh, well, MacVoices, we'll deliver your packets, but you have to pay us $1 million a month. While at the same time saying, oh, Netflix, you're a great customer. We'll make whatever special deal you want. And so the whole doctrine behind the patent or so-called standard essential patents is you see a bunch of companies that come together, they put them together, and they will be able to license back, and make money off their IP, but it can't be discriminatory. And as part of the facts that Apple alleges is that they were discriminated against because they allege Qualcomm is seeking royalties on the entire market price of the phone. And Qualcomm, again, it's just totally unbelievable to me that they talk about how their chips result in all the innovations and the success of the iPhone. It's sort of like really, you're the guys who prior to the iPhone, your chips were using all these ugly little phones that had 1-inch screens and keyboards that were twice as big, and they were just ugly and unusable as smart devices. Clearly, I'm partisan here because I fell in love with the iPhone when it first announced and I first bought one. I mean, it revolutionized the cell phone business. So here, according to the Apple allegation, Qualcomm is trying to claim payments for all sorts of things on the entire device of their phone. So obviously, maybe Qualcomm sees the case. That's why they're doing paying the discount fees, and everything was fine until it's not clear what really started to make the relationship go bad. But sort of in a nutshell, Apple is saying that, okay, well, it's true they have these other patents, but number one, we're not using them. We're not infringing on them. Number two, And in rejoinder to that, Qualcomm is saying, it's very, very, very important, that these are patents that Apple's invoking, and Apple's response to the counter is, well, we have no knowledge, we're not using these patents. We have no knowledge that they're essential to the standard. We have no knowledge that they're essential to anything. Qualcomm has not fulfilled its obligation to demonstrate its value. All we know is that they say it's worth something. So, as I say, I think lawyers must wait for years to be able to take a dig at counter counsel in a way like that, because it goes on throughout when these pleadings, all of the well, and on this patent, we don't use it. Qualcomm hasn't demonstrated that it's a valid patent. They haven't demonstrated it has any worth. All we have is their words that it's valuable in some way. So they're fighting. I think some of the interesting things to me about this is there was a case, and I can provide a sort of a PDF from this, where in China there was a decision that Qualcomm announced, I think back in 2015. It took a little bit of digging. Ultimately it was retrievable as a press release off of their site, where they were having new royalty agreements based on 65% of the market value of the phone. And at first that seemed a little bit odd, but when you start to think about it, okay, what they're saying is, by discounting a certain amount, that's probably proportioning, some amount for the distribution channel to make money. And they're saying that 65%, that's the amount of money that I forget the Chinese manufacturer was making. And then Qualcomm was making their, patent claim off of that percentage. Throughout the Apple proceedings and a little bit some of the other commentary, is there basically the claim that the royalty that they're claiming, off of the full value of the device, is equal or exceeds the value of what they pay for the chip. So I have some comments on, as we go into this in terms of maybe financially what's at stake. But the other interesting development is, we're recording this on July 18. Tomorrow, July 19, Qualcomm has their earnings report. And yesterday in the EU, where there is a similar investigation into Qualcomm's business practices, and maybe a deeper investigation because Qualcomm is trying to acquire semiconductor NXP headquartered in the Netherlands. They were looking for information about Qualcomm's licensing practices, and Qualcomm said they wouldn't provide it, and the EU came back and said, in that case, fine, well, we're going to have you pay a penalty of this number of euros per day, on the order of $65,000 a day. For noncompliance. And again, Qualcomm made this, well, the reason we can't do it is they're all locked up in paper and we have to go to a warehouse, and it could be in any one of 120 boxes. And, just really sort of to me, seems like a very lame excuse. So I think maybe for the listeners out there, this is not a big guy and a bigger guy getting in a fight. I think this really does have elements of white and black, right and wrong. So we'll have to see what happens as this case goes forward.
MacVoices is sponsored by Smile, the makers of world-class software for the Mac and iOS. Find out about how their amazing utilities can make you more productive at smilesoftware.com. If you are looking to get into automation on the Mac but are a little afraid of it or don't know where to start, then I have the perfect answer for you: Text Expander from Smile. Automation, Text Expander? Not exactly what you were expecting, but Text Expander is the very definition of automation for personal productivity. At the most basic level, and my personal favorite, is Text Expander's ability to let you create snippets of text that can be a few characters or a few pages in length, and then trigger them with an abbreviation. Snippets work for text, code, even graphics and links. Once you master the idea of snippets, which should take all of a few minutes, you can take it to the next level with fill-in-the-blank snippets to create custom forms and learn to insert clipboard content in a snippet. Want to go even more in-depth? Snippets can invoke multi-platform JavaScript, AppleScript, and shell scripts. Have multiple Macs or iOS devices? TextExpander can sync your snippets via iCloud so they're available everywhere you work, even to your iPhone and iPad, to make and keep you more productive no matter where you're working. That's the beauty of TextExpander. It's simple enough to use to really make a significant improvement in your productivity from the start, but you can grow with it as you find more ways to make it work for you. I use TextExpander virtually every time I sit down at the keyboard, which means I use it a lot. No, really, a lot. I think you will too, so I want you to visit smilesoftware.com to download their free trial and see what a difference TextExpander can make for you. It will take you minutes to get up and running, and you will see the benefits immediately. That's smilesoftware.com to improve your productivity with TextExpander. Get started right now. Thanks to Smile for their ongoing support of MacVoices. What to comment there on or ask you about? First of all, as we recorded this, as Mark said, I saw some pieces go across some of the news sites today that the Qualcomm CEO is convinced that this will settle out of court. Whether that has anything to do with the EU rulings or anything else, I don't know. But I thought it was kind of an interesting way to look at it, depending on who you were reading and how you interpret it. It's either we really don't want to go to court and have this thing put under the microscope, or we're just going to beat up Apple so bad that they're going to want to pay up. So
I suspect it's the former, because if you look at this chart, you can see that Wall Street has severe concerns about Qualcomm's ongoing profitability. If the licensing revenues decline, their share price declined, and their market cap vaporized about 20% back in January when news about the Apple lawsuit first became public. So I suspect on that maybe the Qualcomm CEO is starting to realize this is not a slam dunk, no brainer decision that will go our way, and maybe we should get out of this and minimize our damage.
And I love what the EU did. $65,000 to a company Qualcomm size is not horrible, but it's probably enough to
per day.
Yeah, per day. Hopefully it'll get somebody's attention, and I like that because that feels like that's going to force them to keep the process moving. If they, pardon me, if they really couldn't locate the stuff, then that's fine. They're going to have to pay up until they can. But now they are certainly motivated. It's none of this, let's have a 90-day extension so we can go and dig it out and, revise our strategy. It's like, okay, we got to get it, and we got to get it pretty soon because it's costing us $65K a day. That
is an enormous. That is a lot of money. And let me just double check Dr. Google here and make sure I didn't misplace a decimal point. I did. It's 580,000 euros per day, or $650,000 per day.
Oh, okay. Now we're talking.
Oh my God! Yes. It's $650,000 per day.
Okay, so now
even in Washington, that's real money.
Yeah. So now you've got suddenly a whole lot of motivation to go to that warehouse and take 120 employees and send them all overnight. Man, get it done. Wow.
Right. I really think that it will be fascinating to see what happens here, and then see this developed as a case study for either business schools or law schools. Because, as I said, just reading the Qualcomm's pleading and sort of their dismissing and urinating on Apple as a player, and how they have nothing. They just make things with round edges, and they'd be nowhere without all of our telecommunications technology. Maybe that sounds like maybe they've just been getting away with this for so long, and They're just drinking their own bathwater or breathing their own exhaust. I mean, it just it just seems totally unaware of the market conditions out there.
One phrase you used early in your discussion of this was the one that I always find particularly interesting, and that's antitrust. Um, Antitrust, one man's antitrust can be another man's, I don't know, another man's benefit. And sometimes I think some of the monopoly discussions are counterproductive. I think overall, definitely they're a good thing, that you don't want certain companies monopolizing certain things. Do you think though that this rises to that level, with Qualcomm doing what they've been doing?
Um, so let me provide some of the background facts on that, behind that comment. So Qualcomm last week, I believe just a couple days after the 4th of July, or maybe before, filed an injunction to prohibit Apple from importing iPhones that have non-Qualcomm baseband chips in it. In other words, if they use an Intel baseband chip, got to keep it out. And they're arguing that that's in the interest of consumers, because it is fair to standards holders. So I think that's why it sort of has sort of this this hint of antitrust, but because certainly Qualcomm for CDMA, they invented it, they have all the patents. What is odd to me is that if you're using GSM or 4G, there are other patents that Qualcomm has, which apparently they've been just as usurious in extracting high licensing fees. So that's obviously a deep part of their business plan and their business culture. So. Does it yet raise to antitrust in terms of facts? Well, maybe, because there was certain guarantees in terms of minimum payments to Qualcomm that sure you can go use somebody else, but you still owe us this amount of money. So it's a financial hurdle. And I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an antitrust lawyer. So to me, that sounds like restraint of commerce. I don't know if that passes an antitrust standpoint, but I think, as Apple says in its pleading, it's certainly counter to the public interest, to restrict supply, restrict competition, and ensure prices are high.
One other point I wanted to make, when you were talking about potential numbers here, it sounds like the EU is taking this obviously very seriously. But when you start talking about the number of iPhones that have been sold, I mean, wow. That no matter what kind of numbers you assign for damages or payments or anything, the numbers take on a staggering turn. They take a staggering turn
Right.
when you start figuring that out. So this is, in a lot of ways, now Apple certainly has the bank account to take care of that should it go against them. But at the same time, it's...
Well, if it goes against them, they've already paid, except for maybe these past 2 quarters where, again, another detail here is another point to the feud between them is, Apple has stopped, their CMs, contract manufacturers, from paying the royalty component of their fees that they owe Qualcomm. And Apple has indemnified them. And in fact, another development just either today or yesterday, in response to Qualcomm filing against the Apple CMs, and also charging that Apple is tortiously interfering with their business relationships with third parties. Foxconn has come out and has basically pleaded, we want to bring this forward, and we want to sue Apple, and we want Qualcomm to sue Apple instead of us, because we have this indemnity agreement with them. So it's giving Apple more control of the battlefield between the parties. So
yeah, and that I mean,
see what I mean? Wouldn't this make a good miniseries?
yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, and the tortious interference question is, I mean, boy, that I get it, and I kind of like the idea. And okay, so they sue Foxconn, so Qualcomm sues Foxconn. It's going to be Apple's lawyers that respond,
Right.
or at least people that are consulting with Apple's lawyers because of the indemnification agreement. So,
Well, that's exactly what they want to do. Is they're basically saying, okay, just bring this in as as another matter to be litigated in one trial between the two, and so Foxconn will be present there, but they'll if the judge approves this, then they'll have certainly a much diminished role, and it'll just be battle of QVA, Qualcomm versus Apple.
but if it starts becoming Qualcomm versus Apple and Qualcomm versus Foxconn and Qualcomm versus another two suppliers.
That's the thing, Chuck. Is if Foxconn pleading is approved by the judge, my understanding is that basically it would become another matter of dispute between Qualcomm and Apple, and it would basically sort of eliminate this other Qualcomm versus Foxconn lawsuit from happening and going forward.
Well, yeah, I guess where I was going with it is, you're about to start, if Qualcomm isn't careful, they're about to stack up a whole bunch of people in the courtroom that are against them and on Apple's side, even if Apple is doing the indemnification. I'm not sure. Well, a lot would depend on how it's structured.
Exactly. There's certainly a lot of unseemly stuff is going to get made public, and you could see why the Qualcomm CEO would make a strategic retreat, saying, "Oh, I think we'll be able to settle this out of court," because that way they can settle it, put it under NDA, and nobody knows a damn thing.
Right. And who knows? By the time folks hear this, it may be old news, but it's interesting. What is it that punched your button that got you so interested to the point that you're digging into it and reading the pleadings and all? Is it just tech business, or is there something else about this that really tickled you?
I suppose it's sort of initially it was. Okay, there's a dispute going back and forth between the companies, and then I think whenever it was sort of like maybe the January earnings call, either that call or something, at the same time, Tim Cook was, saying that, the reason, I hate litigation, but this fight is about something more. It's not about patents. It's they're trying to unfairly claim that they should get paid a royalty on what is pure and simple Apple innovations. So then just seeing them back and forth, and having a little bit of excess time over Memorial Day weekend and starting to read these things, it became really a fascinating battle back and forth. And as I say, I think ultimately it's contractual. I think this patents are a red herring, but it seems that that's the only thing I think Qualcomm could be charging or countering against. Otherwise they're saying, yeah, we price fixed and we double dipped, and they don't want to admit that. So, it just seems that, all these agreements that they reference, if these are going to be made public, as they will, if they're introduced at trial, as they will, because that be necessary by Apple to prove its case, or any of the other parties. I don't think Qualcomm wants that out. I think they're going to be whatever damage is done, I think, to their reputation, I think, I think they'll have, much more damage to their brand image and reputation if all of this comes public, because it's going on in 3 continents.
Eero is my choice for a wireless mesh network solution for my home, and I think it should be yours too. Installation was a snap. Plug in the Eero, download the Eero iOS app, and follow the screens. The Eero has a single light to let you know what's going on as you set it up. The only thing you need to decide on is the name of your new network and the password. Tell Eero what room the Eero is located in, and you're set. The Eero beacons come next. Go to either the farthest reaches of your house or an area where your Wi-Fi has been weak in the past, find an outlet, and plug it in. Tell the Eero app that you want to add a beacon, identify the room in the house, and boom, the setup is done and your network is ready. That's it. No codes, no logging into a confusing control panel, just easy network management from the app. Something I haven't mentioned before, keeping your router up to date with the latest software patches and revisions is critical with a capital C in today's hacked, breached, compromised environment. In typical Eero fashion, they make it easy because they push the software updates straight to your Eero. You're always current, always have the latest features, and always have the best Eero you can possibly have. The second generation Eero has added a radio to become a tri-band system twice as fast as before. It sits flat on your desk and doesn't take up as much room as many other routers. It can connect via Ethernet to be as versatile as you need it to be with your network set up. It even has a new thread radio so you can connect your low-power devices such as light bulbs, wireless switches, and the like. In short, it does everything you want a wireless router to do, does them easily, and does them all well. I hope you've decided that Eero is for you. If not, well, that's your loss. Guess you'll just have to continue to have spotty Wi-Fi coverage, do the manual updates, study that complex control panel, and everything else you're doing to maintain your network. But if you're tired of that, visit Eero.com and use the code MacVoices for free overnight shipping. Order today, be up and running with Eero tomorrow. You're going to love it. So again, Eero.com and use the coupon code MacVoices at checkout to get free overnight shipping. Thanks to Eero for their support of MacVoices. The one other thing that does make me that made me a little uncomfortable when I first read about this, and I have not read or studied it anywhere near the way you have, is that if Apple, okay, so let's just say they were double dipping. Let's say they were doing all these very questionable things, but if Apple signed a contract agreeing to it, unless you can show that they were doing something illegal, then I have a little bit of a problem with Apple trying to break that contract. Now, if the contract is illegal or the activities are illegal and that was not known or determined at that time, then that's a whole other matter.
Right. I agree with you. I think, to me, I think the spark in the matter here was, for whatever reason, the Korean Fair Trade Commission started investigating this. Apple was brought in. Apple testified, and Qualcomm didn't like what Apple had to say, and they stopped making payments to Apple. And my general sense is I think Apple is a principal company, and yes, we're paying a lot, and this is really horrible, and we'll negotiate, and we have a deal, and we'll live by our deal, and we'll try to negotiate a better one. But the second you want us to go and lie, I think that was the time. I think I think I would not be surprised if in a couple of years Apple doesn't buy a damn thing from Qualcomm. I think they just really cut their head off on this. Yeah. I mean, because we even have, imagine this, we have Samsung, Apple's bitter, cell phone enemy, and diminishing, semiconductor supplier. Samsung is making similar allegations, in the Korean court system against Qualcomm. So it's the old enemy of my enemy is my friend. So that's why I'm reading the Qualcomm thing. I'm thinking, come on, guys, there's got to be some meat. There's got to be something here. But I think they're all lawyered up. They're not admitting. They're not offering anything other than Apple's wrong, and they're not even admitting or responding to Apple's theories. They're just saying that these are wrong, and other people pay our royalty rights and don't complain. And trying to make this all about Apple.
I'm going to watch this now with a lot more interest, just because now you've explained a lot more and know a lot more. And I hope that's what the viewers and listeners will do, is do it. Because up till now it's been, okay, when it came out, there was the usual big kerfuffle, and then it kind of calmed down. And now it's, you see it pass by on the headlines every once in a while. And I keep going back to that $650,000 a day. Well, that's a dent on anybody's balance sheet.
Right. So, okay. So what will they do? I suspect they'll get 120 boxes and they will Xerox them all and scramble them up and then deliver them and say, here, because I'm not aware that they're under any obligation to do anything except to deliver the documents, meaning they don't have to be indexed and filed in such a way to make it easy to find stuff.
Yeah, but man, you don't want to do that to the wrong judge, because the wrong judge will just.
Well, that is certainly true. But anyway, so here's some of the things to think about. So Apple and its pleadings, they're basically saying that the only appropriate remedy is disgorgement of all the illegally obtained profits. So what does that mean? Okay, let's assume Apple did 200 million iPhones last year. It's more, but let's assume there's 200 million that had Qualcomm components in them. If it seems to be the case through some of the other third party, if you look at some of the teardowns that IHS Supply does, sort of the baseband is maybe around $10, $12. So assuming that the amount Apple was paying was doubled because of the other royalties, if that's $10, that's $2 billion. For just last year. If you look at that, okay, if that dropped another $2 billion, to the Apple's bottom line, 5.2 billion shares outstanding, that would be 40 cents per share EPS. So, Apple's going forward PE is 14. That's $5.60 a share to Apple. If and assuming, okay, this is, retroactively they get a big, multi-billion dollars, for disgorged profits for all the times that they've been overcharged in the past. That's another big chunk of billions of dollars to Apple. I doubt if they'll ever actually see that, and we'll come to that in a moment, if you will. But thinking about $10 more per iPhone going forward. Everyone's fantasizing about an iPhone 8 and super cycle. Okay, so that's another. That's what you see. Is a lot more profit dropping to the bottom line. So it's certainly a big windfall to Apple and and Apple shareholders. And we'll have to see what the courts do, because if we take the Samsung case as any guide, only for the reason that it's going before the same judge in San Jose, Judge Koh, it was limited and allowed the original Apple damages from Samsung. So if you assume maybe that's might be likely for damage awards in the Apple v Samsung case. It's hard to tell how much might actually get awarded to Apple, but certainly if immediately going forward, if their bill of material drops $10-12 as a result of certain royalty payments being declared null and void, that'll be a big windfall for them whenever that occurs, if it occurs.
Yeah, that's, as you were explaining it, that's exactly what I was thinking. Okay, at the very least, if Qualcomm just got a slap on the hand and said, okay, you're barred from doing this anymore, it still benefits Apple. And at some point, a judge, I would think, would have to order at least expenses paid. So that would mean that Apple doesn't lose any money in pursuing this and benefits going forward.
Right, but if it's $100 million, $200 million, I mean, that's peanuts in compared to what's the big picture of what's at stake.
Yeah.
And I just there is this old Spanish expression, which is a proverb, a fish dies by its own mouth, right? Because it's the one that goes after the hook. Well, if you apply it to people, they die by what they say. So, I think whoever the stupid person was that Qualcomm that said, "Oh, Apple will start paying you money again. Just go out and admit that you made mistakes, and this is how you can correct it, and here's a script of what you should do." I think that person, just that little remark, just unleashed this hellstorm.
Probably not still employed at Qualcomm.
I don't know.
Just odds are good. Odds are good.
I hope it wasn't. I hope it wasn't the CEO. I mean, you never know.
There you go. Ooh.
I mean, but again, as I say, it's clear that Qualcomm has done a lot to invent, a lot of great technology. I think they just developed maybe a little too strong an opinion, and they. So again, if you read it, and now this is just pure fact-based fiction. If I were doing a mini-series, I would go after them on RICO, racketeering corrupt organizations, where basically you go after people where they have a particular pattern of abuse. And I think, if you're reading through it, it's certainly, Qualcomm has used this tactics against Apple, against Samsung, against the Chinese manufacturers, against the European manufacturers. If I were CEO, I don't know. I mean, again, I don't know how strong something like that would be as a possibility, but I certainly wouldn't want to have to worry about that. So, I think, okay, yeah. I mean, will they settle out of court? We'll have to see. I don't know. I mean, it just depends what's if Samsung pays money and admits that Apple was right, and that Apple hadn't misstated anything, then I could see Tim Cook settling. If they don't, my impression is that Tim is a pretty straight arrow, and he'd rather go down fighting it. Because I don't think this. I don't think this is about money. I think this is money's important, but I think there's bigger principles at stake here.
Mark, you've been studying this and paying a lot more attention to this than many of us have. If some of the viewers and listeners want to follow it going forward, is there any particular source or any news site or news organization that's been doing a better job than others of covering this, or is it just a matter of waiting for it to bubble to the top? I mean, obviously we're going to hear about the settlement or of the trial, but if they want to kind of dig in a little deeper the way you have, any place you would send them?
Oh, that's a good question. I found Ars Technica is pretty good in having links to new filings. I think they have more of those links than maybe some others do. I know I've downloaded a bunch of the filings from Scribd, so they might want to try Googling, there. I know ultimately all the filings are public, but I haven't figured out, how you can find those on a regular basis. So for me, it's just been as you read things in the news, just read them and download them.
Okay, good. Well, I appreciate you coming on and talking about it. I think, again, it's one of those stories that may not be sexy. It may not be applicable to the average user other than just a general interest. But what got my attention when you and I were emailing about this was what you were talking about could sink to the bottom line on Apple's stock price and Apple's earnings per share. And that's like, whoa, I did not realize it was quite that potentially that big a deal. So, there you go. So, should we buy Apple?
I leave that up to everybody and their conscience and their financial advisor.
Yeah, we do not give financial advice. We're not licensed to give financial advice. But so good dodge, Mark. Good dodge. If folks want to get in touch with you to ask questions or comment on this, of course they're welcome to email me. I'll get it to you. But where can folks find you?
Best two ways to get me is either on Twitter at Mark Fuccio, MarkFuccio, or they can contact me through LinkedIn.
Excellent. Thank you for taking the time and all the research, even though you were doing it anyway, but for sharing it. Really interesting, and we will look for your director's credits in the series coming up on Netflix.
I think this is going to get a lot more interesting before it's over. So it's just fascinating to see what's going on.
Yeah. Well, we'll see you back again for something. I don't know whether it'll be one-on-one or the Mac jury, but you'll definitely be back.
We'll be around, and I hope the viewers and listeners found this interesting.
I hope so too.
And educational.
Yeah. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Voices. This was not exactly our usual fare, but I think it's a really interesting story. Of course, anything that has to do with Apple is interesting, but this particular one has a lot of implications, as you know. And just think, right now, between the time we said we were recording this and the time you're reading it, just calculate how many $650,000 fines that Qualcomm got tagged with, and you'll realize how important it is. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes, links to subscribe, and to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, SoundCloud, the Mac Voices blog, the Mac Voices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter, and on Mac Voices magazine, free on Flipboard that helps you do more with your Apple tech. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.